Victoria forgot to hang up her phone after what she thought was a private call with James Mitchell on Thursday afternoon, March 16, 2023. I was in my home office at Sterling Penthouse, 740 Park Avenue, Upper East Side, Manhattan, reviewing quarterly portfolio statements when I heard her voice coming through the speaker of her iPhone, which she'd left on the marble kitchen counter. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Rob's nothing without his money, and after the divorce he'll have half of nothing while we have everything. The recordings will prove he's mentally unstable and financially abusive. My attorney says we can claim he hid assets offshore to avoid supporting me. I stood frozen in the doorway between my office and our kitchen, my blood turning to ice as I heard my wife of 18 years plotting my complete financial and personal destruction with my business partner of 15 years. I didn't say anything, but at that moment something in me broke, not just hurt, broke like a bone snapping clean through. I walked straight back to my home office and made 3 phone calls, one to Klaus Weber at Credit Suisse in Zurich, one to Maria Santos at Calder Associates in the Cayman Islands, and one to David Wilson, Manhattan's most feared divorce attorney. Victoria came back from what she told me was going to be her spa weekend in the Hamptons, expecting to find her devoted husband waiting with champagne and her favorite white roses from the florist on Madison Avenue. But there was a surprise waiting for her. Every joint account showed zero balance. The penthouse deed was in escrow with instructions to sell. Her credit cards were cancelled. Her monthly allowance account was frozen. And then I realized she wouldn't just leave it alone. This was just the beginning. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. Let me take you back to how this all started, because you need to understand just how much Victoria Sterling meant to me, and how deeply her betrayal cut through 20 years of what I thought was genuine love. I met Victoria at a charity gala for pediatric cancer research at the Metropolitan Museum of Art on a cold October evening in 2004. She was 24, working as a freelance model while finishing her MBA at Yale, struggling to pay rent on a studio apartment in Hell's Kitchen. I was 35, a senior vice president at Goldman Sachs Private Wealth Management, finally making the kind of money that let me breathe easy after growing up in a working-class family in Queens. Victoria was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen, not just physically, though she was stunning with her long auburn hair and green eyes that seemed to see right through to your soul. She was intelligent, articulate, and had this way of making you feel like the most interesting person in the room when she talked to you. We spent 3 hours at that gala talking about everything from international finance to her dreams of starting her own luxury brand consultancy. Our courtship was a fairy tale. I'd pick her up in my BMW and take her to Le Bernardin Daniel or Jean-Georges. We'd spend weekends at my house in East Hampton, walking the beach and planning our future together. Victoria had this laugh, a genuine musical sound that made me feel like I'd won the lottery every time I heard it. When she looked at me across a candlelit table, I felt like the luckiest man in Manhattan. I proposed on Valentine's Day 2005 with a 4-carat Tiffany solitaire that cost more than most people make in a year. We were having dinner at Le Bernardin, our favorite restaurant, when I got down on one knee right there at our corner table. Victoria cried, genuine tears of joy, and said yes before I could even finish asking. The entire restaurant applauded, and the maitre d' sent over champagne on the house. Our wedding in June 2006 was everything Victoria had dreamed of. 300 guests at the Pierre Hotel, flowers flown in from Holland, a 10-piece orchestra, and a dress that cost more than my first car. I paid for everything without blinking, including her student loans, $180,000 from Yale Business School that she'd been struggling to manage on her modeling income. For the first 5 years of our marriage, I thought I was living in a dream. Victoria transformed our penthouse into something from Architectural Digest: Brazilian cherry hardwood floors, Italian marble countertops, custom millwork throughout. She had impeccable taste and an eye for luxury that made our home the envy of everyone who visited. Victoria managed our social calendar like a Fortune 500 CEO. Charity galas, Broadway premieres, weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard with other Wall Street couples. She knew which restaurants were impossible to get into and somehow always had reservations. She could discuss wine with sommeliers, art with gallery owners, and politics with investment bankers, making me look good by association. I gave Victoria everything she wanted without question. When she mentioned loving a particular designer handbag, it would appear in our closet within a week. When she talked about wanting to learn French, I arranged for private tutors. When she dreamed of visiting the Amalfi Coast, I chartered a yacht for 2 weeks and invited her 3 closest girlfriends to join us. But looking back now, I can see the warning signs I ignored because I was so deeply in love. Victoria never seemed genuinely interested in my work beyond what it could provide for her lifestyle. When I'd try to share the excitement of closing a major deal or the stress of a difficult client, her eyes would glaze over and she'd change the subject to something about redecorating or planning our next vacation. She never wanted children, which disappointed me, but I accepted because I loved her. "I'm not ready," she'd say. Then later, "Maybe next year." And eventually, "I just don't think I'm meant to be a mother." I respected her choice, but secretly wondered if she simply didn't want anything to interfere with her perfect lifestyle. By 2015, my portfolio had grown to over $10 million through a combination of successful investments, client bonuses, and the booming market. Victoria's lifestyle grew with our wealth. Designer clothes for every season, jewelry that cost more than most people's cars, spa treatments that ran into the thousands monthly. "I put the penthouse in Victoria's name for estate planning purposes," she said, because she'd read an article about asset protection. I increased her monthly allowance to $15,000 to cover her personal expenses, clothes, beauty treatments, lunches with friends, and whatever else she wanted. Money had never been an issue between us because I made more than enough to support any lifestyle she could imagine. The first real crack in our marriage appeared in 2020 during the COVID lockdown. Suddenly, we were stuck in the penthouse together for weeks at a time, and I started noticing how little we actually had to talk about when we weren't discussing travel plans or social events. Victoria seemed restless, irritated by my presence in spaces she'd grown accustomed to having to herself. She started taking long phone calls behind closed doors, claiming they were with her girlfriends or her personal trainer, who was doing virtual sessions. She'd disappear for hours to run errands that never seemed to result in any actual purchases coming home. When I'd ask about her day, her answers became vague and defensive. In 2021, Victoria began taking frequent girls' trips, long weekends in Miami, spa retreats in Arizona, shopping expeditions to Los Angeles. She'd come back relaxed and happy, but distant from me. The physical intimacy that had always been a cornerstone of our relationship began to fade. Victoria was always too tired, too stressed, or too busy planning the next trip. But I attributed everything to the stress of the pandemic, the isolation, the uncertainty everyone was feeling. Victoria had never worked after we married, and I thought maybe she was struggling with purpose or identity issues that many wealthy spouses face. I suggested she might want to start that luxury consultancy she'd once dreamed about, or get involved with some charitable boards, but she showed no interest. James Mitchell had been my closest friend at Goldman Sachs for 15 years. We'd started as associates around the same time, competed for the same promotions, celebrated each other's successes, and commiserated over the inevitable Wall Street disappointments. James handled our European accounts while I focused on domestic high-net-worth clients. We'd built our careers together, covered for each other during difficult times, and had been each other's best men at our respective weddings. James was a frequent guest at our penthouse for dinner parties and cocktail events. He and Victoria always seemed to get along well. She'd laugh at his jokes, ask about his latest travels to London or Zurich, and include him in conversations about art or wine. I was happy that my wife and best friend enjoyed each other's company. It never occurred to me that their relationship might be anything more than friendly. Looking back, I can see how carefully they managed their deception. James would mention casually that he'd run into Victoria at Bergdorf's or seen her having lunch at the plaza with some girlfriends. Victoria would mention that James had recommended a particular restaurant or given her advice about some investment she was considering. They created a narrative of casual, innocent interactions that explained why they might have each other's personal phone numbers or why Victoria might know details about James's work travel schedule. By early 2023, I should have realized that something fundamental had changed in my marriage. Victoria seemed to have less and less interest in spending time together, even during activities she'd once enjoyed. Our conversations became mechanical, discussions about household maintenance, social obligations, or travel logistics. The warmth and intimacy that had once defined our relationship felt like it was evaporating. But I kept telling myself it was temporary, that we'd find our way back to each other once the stress of whatever she was going through resolved itself. I increased Victoria's monthly allowance to $20,000 in January 2023, thinking maybe financial stress was contributing to her distance. She accepted the increase without comment or gratitude, which should have been another warning sign. The Victoria I'd fallen in love with would have been excited about the extra money, would have made plans for how to spend it, would have shown some appreciation for my gesture. But I was so focused on my own career, on managing my clients' portfolios through a volatile market, that I didn't pay enough attention to what was happening in my own home. But then Victoria's accidental phone confession on that Thursday afternoon revealed the true extent of her deception, and I realized she and James had been planning to destroy my life for months, while I continued supporting the very lifestyle that allowed them to meet and scheme behind my back. Let me tell you exactly what I heard on March 16, 2023, because every word mattered in understanding just how calculated and vicious their betrayal really was. I'd been working from home that Thursday, reviewing quarterly reports and preparing for client calls the next day. Victoria had told me she was leaving Friday morning for a spa weekend at Topping Rose House in Bridgehampton with her friend Sarah. She'd been packing and making arrangements all week, and I'd given her my Black American Express card for any expenses. At 3:47 p.m., Victoria was in our kitchen making what she thought was a private phone call to James. I was in my home office, which is separated from the kitchen by a hallway and French doors that are usually closed, but Victoria's iPhone was connected to our Sonos sound system throughout the penthouse, and she'd apparently activated the speaker function without realizing it was broadcasting through the entire apartment. James's voice came through crystal clear. "Are you sure the recordings will be enough? Rob's been in finance for 25 years. He's not stupid about legal issues." Victoria's response made my blood freeze. "Trust me, I've been recording him for 8 months. Every time he raises his voice about anything, every time he gets frustrated with work stress, every time he makes a comment about money or expenses. My attorney says it establishes a pattern of financial control and emotional abuse. Plus, I've got him on tape talking about his offshore accounts in Switzerland. We can claim he's been hiding assets to avoid supporting me if we divorced." My hands started shaking as I realized my wife had been systematically creating false evidence to destroy my reputation and steal my money. James continued, "What about the prenup? That thing was airtight when he made you sign it back in 2005. The prenup becomes irrelevant if I can prove abuse and hidden assets," Victoria explained, her voice cold and calculating in a way I'd never heard before. "My lawyer found a case in California where the wife got everything despite a prenup because she proved the husband was psychologically abusive and financially manipulative. All I need is evidence of his controlling behavior and proof that he's hiding money offshore." "And you've got both?" Victoria laughed. Not the musical laugh I'd fallen in love with, but something harsh and predatory. "Rob's been talking about his Swiss accounts for years, thinking he's impressive. He has no idea I've been recording every conversation. Plus, he's so controlling about money, questioning every expense, setting limits on my allowances, making me justify purchases. It's textbook financial abuse." I felt sick. Victoria was describing my normal, responsible approach to managing our household expenses as abuse. Every conversation where I'd asked about a particularly large credit card bill, every discussion about budgeting for major purchases, every time I'd expressed concern about overspending, she'd been twisting it all into evidence of controlling behavior. James's voice. "What's the timeline? When are you filing?" "Next month." I wanted to wait until after tax season so his attention would be on work instead of watching his accounts closely. "My attorney is filing on April 15th. Poetic justice, right? While he's stressed about tax deadlines, I'll be serving him with papers, claiming he's an abusive husband who's been hiding money offshore to avoid his marital obligations. And then, Victoria's voice was full of satisfaction, then Rob learns what it feels like to have nothing. The court will freeze all his accounts, pending the investigation into hidden assets. He'll be living on whatever cash he has in his wallet, while I'm comfortable in the penthouse with full access to our joint accounts. By the time the legal process is finished, his reputation will be destroyed, his career will be over, and I'll own everything we've built together. "What about us?" James asked. "When can we be public about our relationship? Once the divorce is final and I have my settlement, we can be together openly. Rob will be too broken and humiliated to cause us any problems. Besides, who's going to believe a disgraced banker who lost everything in a messy divorce over financial abuse allegations?" James laughed. "I have to admit it's brilliant. Rob trained you well. You learned enough about finance to use it against him." "Rob's nothing without his money," Victoria said with contempt. "Take away his portfolio and his reputation, and what's left? A middle-aged man from Queens who got lucky on Wall Street. Once I have half of everything, he can go back to wherever people like him belong." The casual cruelty in her voice when she dismissed my entire career, my character, my worth as a human being. It was like hearing a stranger speak. This wasn't the woman I'd loved for nearly 20 years. This was someone who'd been systematically planning my destruction while accepting my love, my support, and my money. But James wasn't finished. "The recordings are definitely admissible in court?" "My attorney says they're perfect. New York is a one-party consent state, which means I can record conversations I'm part of without Rob's knowledge. I've got hours of him talking about money, discussing his Swiss accounts, expressing frustration about expenses. Played back in court, it sounds like a man who's obsessively controlling about finances and hiding assets offshore. And the abuse angle." Victoria's voice was matter-of-fact, like she was discussing a business transaction. "Emotional abuse is harder to prove than physical abuse, but financial control is a recognized form of domestic abuse. The fact that he's been managing all our money, setting limits on my spending, and questioning my expenses establishes a pattern. Add the offshore accounts and the recordings of him talking about money obsessively, and I have a strong case. I realized that every normal conversation about our household finances, every reasonable discussion about budgeting, every responsible approach to managing our wealth, Victoria had been recording and recontextualizing as evidence of abuse. She'd turned my love and generosity into weapons against me." "James, what happens to his Goldman Sachs position?" "Financial abuse allegations will trigger a compliance investigation. Goldman can't afford the reputational risk of a senior VP being accused of hiding assets and abusing his spouse. He'll be suspended pending investigation, and once the story hits the financial press, his career is over. No major firm will touch him. So he loses everything, his money, his career, his reputation. Everything," Victoria confirmed. "And the beautiful part is, he did it to himself by being so controlling and secretive about money. If he'd just been normal about finances, I wouldn't have had anything to record." The phone call ended, and I heard Victoria moving around the kitchen, probably preparing for her trip. But she wasn't going to a spa in the Hamptons. She was meeting with her divorce attorney to finalize the strategy for destroying my life. I sat in my office for 20 minutes, letting the full scope of their betrayal sink in. Victoria hadn't just been having an affair. She'd been conducting financial espionage, systematically gathering evidence to steal everything I'd worked for while destroying my reputation and career. James hadn't just been sleeping with my wife. He'd been feeding her inside information about my accounts, my client relationships, and my professional vulnerabilities that could be exploited in a divorce proceeding. Together, they'd spent months crafting a strategy to leave me with nothing while they walked away with my money, my home, and my life's work. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd assumed I was just another wealthy husband who'd be helpless against a determined wife and a corrupt legal system. They'd forgotten that I'd spent 25 years in international finance, managing complex transactions across multiple jurisdictions. They'd underestimated exactly how sophisticated my understanding of offshore banking and asset protection really was. Victoria and James were about to learn that when you declare war on someone's entire life, you better make sure you understand exactly who you're fighting. That's when I realized Victoria and James had made a critical mistake. They thought I was just another wealthy husband who'd roll over and accept financial destruction through a rigged legal system. They thought I was helpless, confused, ready to be managed and manipulated by attorneys and courts who'd believe her false recordings over my reputation. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. I spent that Thursday evening in my office, making calls to contacts I'd built over 25 years in international finance. Victoria was upstairs packing for her spa weekend, humming contentedly while she prepared for what she thought would be the beginning of my destruction. If she'd looked closely, she would have noticed that I was unusually calm, making quiet phone calls and working on my laptop later than usual. But Victoria had stopped paying attention to my behavior months ago, except when she was recording it for her legal case. My first call was to Klaus Weber at Credit Suisse in Zurich. Klaus and I had worked together on dozens of transactions over the past 15 years, helping American clients diversify their assets internationally while staying fully compliant with U.S. tax laws. Klaus understood both Swiss privacy regulations and U.S. reporting requirements better than almost anyone in international banking. "Robert, my friend," Klaus said in his precise English, "it's been too long since we've spoken. How can I help you?" "Klaus, I need to reactivate some dormant accounts and possibly establish new structures for asset protection. I have a situation developing that requires immediate attention." Klaus's voice became more serious. "Legal troubles? Divorce proceedings that may involve false accusations. I need to protect assets legally and immediately." "I understand. Can you be in Zurich by Monday morning? This type of restructuring is better done in person, and time seems to be important." "I'll be there Sunday night." My second call was to Maria Santos at Calder Associates in the Cayman Islands. Maria specialized in offshore corporate structures for legitimate asset protection, helping clients protect wealth from frivolous lawsuits, business liability, and yes, divorce proceedings involving false accusations. "Robert Sterling," Maria said warmly. "What brings you to call the islands?" "I need to establish multiple corporate entities very quickly for asset protection purposes. We're talking about a $15 million portfolio that needs to be restructured within days." "That's aggressive timing. What's the urgency?" "Divorce filing expected within 30 days with allegations that may freeze domestic accounts. Everything needs to be legally transferred and protected before any court orders can be issued." "Understood. I can have incorporation documents ready by tomorrow afternoon if you can wire the setup fees tonight. But Robert, you understand this has to be done completely legally and with full tax compliance." "Of course. I'm not hiding assets, Maria. I'm protecting them from false accusations while maintaining complete legal transparency." "Good. Send me the account details and I'll get started immediately." My third call was to David Wilson, Manhattan's most expensive and most effective divorce attorney. David had a reputation for destroying opposing counsel who tried to use false accusations or manufactured evidence. His retainer was $100,000, and he was worth every penny. "Mr. Sterling," David said, "I understand you may need representation. I have reason to believe my wife will be filing for divorce within 30 days, alleging financial abuse and hidden assets. The allegations are false, but she's been secretly recording conversations for months to manufacture evidence. Illegal surveillance. New York is one-party consent, so the recordings themselves may be legal, but the context is manipulative. She's been recording normal financial discussions and planning to reframe them as evidence of controlling behavior. Do you have evidence of her deception?" "I have recordings of her planning this strategy with my business partner, who she's also having an affair with. They've been conspiring for months to destroy my career and steal my assets." David's voice sharpened with interest. "Conspiracy and adultery, that changes everything. Can you be in my office Saturday morning? We need to prepare counter-strategies immediately. I'll be there at 9 a.m. By 11 p.m. Thursday night, I had a plan. Klaus would help me legally restructure my assets through Swiss banking relationships. Maria would establish Cayman Islands corporate entities to hold and protect those assets. David would prepare legal countermeasures to destroy Victoria's false abuse claims while exposing her conspiracy with James. But I needed to move fast. Victoria was leaving Friday morning for her fake spa weekend, which was actually a meeting with her divorce attorney to finalize their attack strategy. I had maybe 72 hours before she pulled the trigger on her plan to destroy my life. Friday morning, March 16th, Victoria kissed me goodbye at 8 a.m., wheeling her Louis Vuitton suitcase toward the elevator. "I'll miss you, darling," she said with a smile that now looked predatory to me. "This weekend will be so good for me. I feel like I'm finally ready to make some important life changes." "I hope you get everything you need from this trip," I replied, which was absolutely true, though not in the way she thought. The moment the elevator doors closed, I was on the phone with my assistant at Goldman Sachs. "Cancel all my meetings today and Monday. Family emergency. I'll be working from home." At 10 a.m., I began the most complex financial restructuring of my career. Every stock position, every bond holding, every mutual fund investment, everything had to be liquidated and converted to wire transferable cash within 24 hours. Most brokerages require 3 days to settle stock sales, but Goldman Sachs Private Wealth Management offers same-day settlement for clients with my account size and tenure. By noon Friday, I had $15.2 million in liquid cash sitting in my primary Goldman Sachs account, ready for international transfer. Every investment I'd built over 20 years was now convertible to immediate wire transfers. Friday afternoon, I met with David Wilson in his Midtown office. David reviewed the recordings I'd made of Victoria's phone conversation and smiled grimly. "Robert, this is one of the strongest prenup enforcement cases I've seen. She's literally on tape admitting to manufacturing evidence and planning to commit fraud against the court system. But more importantly, you have evidence of conspiracy between her and your business partner. What's our strategy? Preemptive strike. We file for divorce first on grounds of adultery and conspiracy to commit fraud. We present your evidence of their scheme before she can present her manufactured evidence. We also request court sanctions for attempted fraud and contempt. Timeline? I'm filing Monday morning. By the time she tries to serve you with papers, you'll already be the plaintiff in a divorce case where she's the defendant accused of adultery and fraud. Saturday morning, I was on a Swiss Air flight to Zurich, carrying nothing but a carry-on bag and a briefcase containing all the documentation Klaus would need. I told no one where I was going. As far as anyone knew, I was home in Manhattan, probably working as usual. Sunday morning Zurich time, Klaus and I spent 4 hours in a conference room at Credit Suisse, restructuring my entire financial life. We established 3 separate Swiss accounts, each below the reporting thresholds that would trigger immediate notifications to US authorities. We set up automatic wire transfers from my Goldman Sachs account to these Swiss accounts, scheduled to execute Monday morning at 9 a.m. New York time, exactly when David Wilson would be filing my divorce papers. "This is completely legal," Klaus confirmed, "as long as you report the accounts properly on your next tax returns and maintain full compliance with FATCA regulations." "I'm not hiding anything from the IRS," I assured him. "I'm protecting assets from false accusations while maintaining complete tax compliance." Sunday afternoon, I flew to the Cayman Islands to meet with Maria Santos. By Sunday evening, we'd established Sterling Holdings Limited, a Cayman Islands corporation with me as the sole shareholder and director. The corporate account would receive wire transfers from my Swiss accounts, creating multiple layers of legal protection while maintaining complete transparency for tax purposes. Are you Team Robert? Let me know what you would have done in this situation. And don't forget to hit that like button if you're loving this financial chess match. New ebook alert. I just wrote The Wolf's Justice, my first ebook exclusively for you, my viewers. Strategic revenge wisdom from every story we've shared. Name your price, $0 to $25. Transform betrayal into power, weakness into strength. Link is in the video description or scan the QR code on the screen to grab your copy now. Let's continue. Monday morning, March 20th, I was back in Manhattan, sitting in my home office and watching my plan execute with Swiss precision. At exactly 9 a.m., David Wilson filed divorce papers in Manhattan Supreme Court, with me as plaintiff and Victoria as defendant, citing adultery and conspiracy to commit fraud. At exactly 9:05 a.m., automatic wire transfers began moving $15.2 million from my Goldman Sachs account to 3 separate Swiss accounts. At exactly 9:10 a.m., those Swiss accounts automatically forwarded the funds to Sterling Holdings Limited in the Cayman Islands, where the money would be completely protected by international banking privacy laws while remaining fully reportable for U.S. tax purposes. By 9:15 a.m. Monday morning, my entire portfolio was legally and completely beyond the reach of Victoria's divorce attorneys, while I maintained absolute compliance with all tax reporting requirements. At 10:30 a.m., Victoria called from what she claimed was the spa, but I could hear traffic and city noise in the background. "Darling, I'm having such a wonderful time. I may extend my stay until Tuesday if that's all right." "Take all the time you need," I said sincerely. "I hope you're getting everything you came for." Victoria was probably meeting with her divorce attorney, finalizing their strategy to destroy my life and steal my money. She had no idea that while she was planning my financial destruction, I'd already made it impossible. The moment Victoria walked through our penthouse door on Tuesday evening, March 21st, expecting to find her devoted husband waiting with her favorite dinner reservations and fresh flowers, I knew it was time. What she discovered next would change everything forever. Victoria breezed through the door at 6:30 p.m., glowing with what she thought was anticipation for the destruction she was about to unleash on my life. She was wheeling her Louis Vuitton suitcase and carrying shopping bags from Bridgehampton boutiques, props to support her lie about the spa weekend. "Darling, I'm home," she called cheerfully, the way she had thousands of times over our 18-year marriage. "I feel completely refreshed and ready for anything." She had no idea how ready she was about to become. "Welcome back," I said, emerging from the kitchen where I'd been preparing 2 plates. One for dinner, one for the conversation that would end our marriage. "How was your spa weekend?" Victoria launched into elaborate descriptions of massages, yoga classes, and meditation sessions that had never happened. As she talked, I watched her face, looking for any trace of the woman I'd fallen in love with at that charity gala in 2004. But all I could see now was a stranger who'd spent months plotting my destruction while accepting my love and money. "I have something for you," I said, handing her an envelope. Victoria's face lit up with anticipation. She probably thought it was jewelry, or maybe plane tickets for another European vacation. Instead, it was a copy of the divorce papers David Wilson had filed Monday morning. Her face went through a progression of emotions I'll never forget. Confusion, disbelief, and then growing horror as she read the legal language describing her as defendant in a divorce case citing adultery and conspiracy to commit fraud. "Rob, what is this? Is this some kind of joke?" "Keep reading, Victoria. The evidence section is particularly interesting." As she read further, Victoria's face went pale. David Wilson had included transcript excerpts from her recorded phone conversation with James, where she'd outlined her plan to manufacture abuse claims and steal my assets. Her own words were quoted verbatim in legal documents filed with Manhattan Supreme Court. When did you... Victoria couldn't form complete sentences. "Thursday afternoon, March 15th, at approximately 3:47 p.m. Your phone was connected to our Sonos system when you thought you were having a private conversation with James Mitchell. I heard every word of your plan to destroy my career, steal my money, and claim I was abusive and hiding assets offshore." Victoria collapsed into our Italian leather sofa, the divorce papers scattered around her. "Rob, you have to understand, I wasn't serious about any of that. James and I were just talking, just considering options. I would never actually..." "Victoria, stop. I have recordings of you detailing exactly how you plan to manufacture evidence of abuse. I have recordings of you explaining how you'd been secretly documenting our conversations for 8 months. I have recordings of you and James planning to time the divorce filing with tax season to maximize my stress and minimize my ability to respond." She stared at me like she was seeing a ghost. "You recorded me?" "No, Victoria. You recorded yourself. Your phone's speaker function broadcast your conversation throughout the penthouse. I simply documented what you chose to share." Victoria tried a different approach. "Rob, we can work this out. Whatever problems we're having, we can fix them. We can go to counseling. We can take a trip. We can..." The problems we're having, I interrupted, are that you've been having an affair with my business partner while planning to falsely accuse me of abuse and steal everything I've worked for over 25 years. Those aren't marriage problems, Victoria. That's conspiracy and fraud. Where's James? She asked suddenly, as if realizing her co-conspirator should be helping her. James is having his own conversation right now. Goldman Sachs Security is meeting with him about the ethics violations involved in conspiring against a colleague's personal finances. His access to client information and company resources made his participation in your scheme a fireable offense. Victoria's phone buzzed with a text message. She looked at it and her face went even paler. He's been suspended pending investigation. They're reviewing all his client interactions for the past year. That would be correct. Rob, please, we can fix this. I made mistakes, but we love each other. We can rebuild trust. I walked to our bar and poured myself a scotch, Macallan 25, a bottle Victoria had given me for my 50th birthday. Victoria, let me ask you something. In your recorded conversation with James, you said I was nothing without my money. Do you remember saying that? She looked down at the floor. I was upset. I didn't mean it. You also said that once you had half of everything, I could go back to wherever people like me belong. Do you remember that? Rob, I was just angry. Where do people like me belong, Victoria? I grew up in a working-class family in Queens. My father was a plumber. My mother worked at the phone company. I got to Columbia on academic scholarships and worked nights to pay for living expenses. I built my career through 25 years of 80-hour weeks and complete dedication to my clients. Victoria said nothing. So where do people like me belong? Back in Queens? Back to working nights while going to school? Back to the life I had before I was successful enough to support your lifestyle? I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. You meant exactly that. You married me for my money and my ability to provide for you, but you've always been ashamed of where I came from. You've tolerated my background because it came with a Goldman Sachs salary, but the moment you thought you could take the money without the man, you were happy to dispose of me. Victoria started crying, but they weren't the genuine tears I'd seen when I proposed. These were desperate, manipulative tears designed to make me feel guilty for defending myself. The question is, I continued, what happens now that the money isn't where you thought it was? Victoria looked up sharply. What do you mean? I handed her a second envelope, this one containing bank statements. These are printouts from all our joint accounts as of this morning. Victoria opened the envelope with shaking hands. Every account showed the same balance, 0. Where's our money? She whispered. It's my money, Victoria. It was always my money, earned from my career, through my work, from my clients. The only reason it was ever our money was because I chose to share it with someone I loved. But where is it? Somewhere safe. Somewhere it can't be frozen by false accusations or stolen through fraudulent legal claims. Somewhere it will be protected while we sort out the truth about our marriage. Victoria's desperation was escalating. Rob, I need money, my credit cards, my allowance account, nothing works. How am I supposed to live? The same way you lived before you married me. The same way millions of people live every day without $15,000 monthly allowances. You can't just cut me off financially. That's financial abuse. That's exactly what I was talking about. I almost laughed at the irony. Victoria, you were planning to falsely accuse me of financial abuse while actually committing financial abuse by secretly recording me and conspiring to steal assets you had no legal right to. Now you're experiencing what it feels like to not have access to money you didn't earn from work you never did. Victoria stood up suddenly, her desperation turning to anger. You bastard! You can't do this to me. I'll call my lawyer. I'll call the police. You'll what? Report that your husband legally moved his own money to protect it from your conspiracy to steal it. Your lawyer already knows that strategy won't work because David Wilson sent him a copy of our divorce filing yesterday. Your conspiracy is documented, Victoria. Your affair is documented. Your plan to manufacture evidence is documented. She grabbed her phone and dialed frantically. I could hear James's voicemail message. I'm currently unavailable. Please leave a message. She tried 3 more times with the same result. James isn't answering because James is meeting with Goldman Sachs legal department about his ethics violations, I explained. Conspiring against a colleague's personal finances while having access to confidential client information is a career-ending offense in our industry. Victoria tried her lawyer next. After a brief conversation, she hung up with a defeated expression. He says, "The divorce case has changed everything. He says your evidence of conspiracy makes my abuse claims worthless. He says he might have to withdraw as my attorney if I can't pay his retainer going forward." "And can you?" Victoria looked around our penthouse. At the Italian marble, the custom millwork, the art collection, the furniture that cost more than most people's annual salaries. For 18 years she'd lived in luxury without ever thinking about where the money came from or what would happen if it disappeared. "How long have you been planning this?" she asked quietly. "I wasn't planning anything, Victoria. I was living my life, loving my wife, supporting our marriage, building our future together. You were the one with plans. I simply responded to your plans with better plans." "This is revenge." "No, Victoria. This is protection. Revenge would be destroying your reputation the way you plan to destroy mine. Revenge would be having you arrested for illegal surveillance and conspiracy. Revenge would be making sure you never had access to wealth again." "What is this then?" "This is consequences. You made choices, and choices have consequences. You chose to have an affair. You chose to conspire against me. You chose to plan my destruction. Now you get to experience the consequences of those choices." Victoria walked to our floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, the view that had sealed our decision to buy this penthouse in 2008. "What happens now?" "Now you decide what kind of person you want to be going forward. You can fight this divorce and try to convince a judge that your recorded conspiracy was just idle talk. You can try to claim that your 8 months of secret recordings were motivated by genuine fear rather than greed. You can try to explain why you were having an affair with my business partner while planning to accuse me of abuse. Or you can accept that this marriage is over, sign the divorce agreement that acknowledges your adultery and conspiracy, and start building a life based on your own work instead of someone else's money." Victoria turned back from the window, and for a moment I saw a flash of the woman I'd fallen in love with 19 years earlier. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "I can't live like this," she said. "I can't go back to working, to struggling, to worrying about money." "Then you should have thought about that before you decided to destroy the person who was providing for you." "Will you give me anything? Any kind of settlement?" I'd been expecting this question. "The prenup you signed in 2005 is very clear about what happens in case of adultery or conspiracy. You get nothing except what you brought into the marriage. I brought nothing into the marriage. You know that. I know that. You know that. The question is whether you're willing to accept that and start over, or whether you want to spend the next 2 years fighting a losing legal battle that will cost you money you don't have." Victoria sat back down on the sofa, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. The confident, sophisticated woman who'd managed our social calendar and run our household like a Fortune 500 CEO was gone, replaced by someone who was finally facing the reality of life without unearned wealth. Where will I live? That's not my problem to solve anymore, Victoria. But I will say this, the penthouse is in your name, so you own it outright. You can sell it and live comfortably for years on the proceeds, or you can try to maintain a lifestyle you can't afford until the money runs out. The penthouse is worth maybe $4 million in this market. That's not enough to maintain the lifestyle I'm used to. Then adjust your lifestyle. $4 million is more than most people see in a lifetime. If you're smart about it, you can live comfortably for the rest of your life. If you're not smart about it, you'll be broke in 5 years. Victoria looked at me with something that might have been respect for the first time in years. You really did this. You actually outmaneuvered me. I protected myself from people who were trying to destroy me. That's not outmaneuvering, Victoria. That's survival. She stood up and walked toward our bedroom, then stopped and turned back. The woman you fell in love with in 2004, did she ever really exist? I thought about that question for a long time. I think she existed for a while. I think somewhere along the way, luxury and security became more important to you than love and partnership. I think you forgot that money is a tool, not an identity. And what about the man I married? Does he still exist? He's still here, but he's wiser now. He understands that love without respect is worthless, and that generosity without gratitude is foolish. Victoria nodded and walked toward the bedroom. At the doorway, she turned back one more time. "I'm sorry, Rob. I'm sorry for all of it. I know you are, but being sorry doesn't change what you did, and it doesn't change what happens next." That was the last real conversation Victoria and I ever had as husband and wife. Looking back 2 years later, I discovered that financial independence truly is the ultimate protection against betrayal, and I learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply allowing people to experience the natural consequences of their own choices. Sometimes the most satisfying justice is watching someone discover that they were never as smart as they thought they were. Today, as I write this from my office in Georgetown, Grand Cayman, I can see the Caribbean stretching endlessly toward the horizon. My morning routine includes a swim in water, so clear I can see the bottom at 30 feet, followed by coffee on my terrace while reviewing investment portfolios that have grown to over $20 million. Sterling Holdings Limited has become one of the Cayman Islands' most successful private investment companies. What started as asset protection has evolved into a legitimate international business, managing investments for wealthy clients who want offshore diversification with complete tax compliance. The irony is perfect. Victoria's attempt to steal my domestic wealth forced me to discover how much more valuable international wealth could be. My days are spent managing portfolios, analyzing global markets, and helping clients navigate the complex world of offshore finance. The skills that made me successful at Goldman Sachs have made me even more successful as an independent operator. Without corporate politics, compliance, bureaucracy, and office drama, I can focus entirely on what I do best, making money grow. But the real satisfaction comes from the peace of mind that financial security provides. I sleep well every night, knowing that my wealth is protected by Swiss privacy laws, Cayman Islands incorporation structures, and diversified investments across multiple jurisdictions. No divorce attorney, no matter how clever, can touch assets that are legally held in foreign corporations with proper tax compliance. Victoria's story unfolded exactly as I predicted. She tried to fight the divorce for 6 months, spending a fortune on legal fees while David Wilson systematically destroyed her credibility. Every recorded conversation she'd planned to use against me became evidence of her conspiracy. Every secret meeting with James became proof of adultery. Every lie she told her attorney became another nail in the coffin of her case. By September 2023, Victoria had burned through $200,000 in legal fees, with nothing to show for it except mounting debt, and a reputation as a spouse who conspired against her husband. Her attorney withdrew from the case when she couldn't pay his bills, and she was forced to represent herself in court proceedings she didn't understand. The final divorce decree was signed on October 15, 2023, exactly 7 months after I'd overheard her plotting my destruction. Victoria received exactly what the prenup specified for cases involving adultery. Nothing except what she'd brought into the marriage, which was nothing. She kept the penthouse, as I'd promised, but discovered that maintaining a $4 million property in Manhattan costs about $30,000 a month in taxes, maintenance, and utilities. Victoria tried to maintain her lifestyle for about 18 months, burning through the proceeds of the penthouse sale while living in expensive hotels and trying to find another wealthy man to support her. But Victoria was 44 years old and no longer the stunning model I'd met at that charity gala. The stress of the divorce had aged her dramatically, and her reputation in Manhattan social circles was destroyed. Everyone knew she'd betrayed her husband and conspired to steal his money. No successful man wanted to risk becoming her next victim. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Victoria moved back to her hometown in Ohio in early 2024, where she's working as a real estate agent and living in a 2-bedroom apartment. The woman who once spent $15,000 a month on personal expenses now worries about making rent and car payments. James Mitchell's fall was even more dramatic. Goldman Sachs fired him for ethics violations in April 2023, and word spread quickly through the financial industry about his conspiracy against a colleague. No major firm would hire someone who'd betrayed a partner's trust, and James was blacklisted from Wall Street entirely. He tried to start his own investment advisory firm, but couldn't attract clients without the Goldman Sachs brand behind him. His personal reputation was destroyed by his role in Victoria's scheme, and potential clients didn't trust someone who'd conspired against his own business partner. Last I heard, James was working as an insurance salesman in New Jersey, making cold calls to small businesses and earning about $60,000 a year. The man who thought he could steal my clients and my wife ended up with neither, plus a destroyed career that took 20 years to build. The most satisfying part of their downfall wasn't the poverty or career destruction, it was watching them turn on each other. Victoria blamed James for encouraging her conspiracy and providing bad advice about my financial sophistication. James blamed Victoria for being reckless with their planning and getting caught through her own carelessness. Their affair ended within weeks of my divorce filing, when they realized their scheme had failed, and they were both facing financial ruin. Victoria tried to reconcile with me through intermediaries, offering to confess everything and testify against James in exchange for some kind of settlement. James tried to throw Victoria under the bus by claiming she'd manipulated him into the conspiracy. Neither of them understood that I had no interest in their excuses or their blame-shifting. I'd moved on to a better life, while they were still fighting over the ruins of their failed scheme. My new life in the Cayman Islands has been everything I never knew I wanted. The pace is slower, the stress is minimal, and the focus is entirely on what matters: managing investments and enjoying life. I've made new friends among the international business community here, people who appreciate competence and integrity over politics and manipulation. I've started dating again, not women who are impressed by wealth, but women who have their own careers and their own money. Dr. Sarah Linden is a marine biologist who runs coral reef research projects throughout the Caribbean. She's brilliant, independent, and has never asked me about my net worth or my investment portfolio. When Sarah looks at me, she sees a person, not a bank account. The contrast with Victoria couldn't be more dramatic. Sarah pays for half our dinners, insists on splitting vacation expenses, and would be perfectly happy if I lost every penny tomorrow, as long as I remained the same person she cares about. Dating someone who wants you for yourself, rather than your money, is a freedom I'd forgotten existed. My relationship with money has also evolved. Wealth is no longer about supporting someone else's lifestyle or proving my worth through expensive purchases. Money is freedom, security, and options. It's the ability to say no to people who don't deserve your time, yes to opportunities that excite you, and goodbye to situations that don't serve your well-being. I still talk to Klaus Weber at Credit Suisse regularly, and he often comments on how much happier I sound during our conversations. "Robert, you sound like a man who has found peace with his success," he told me last month. "Many of my American clients are driven by fear. Fear of losing money, fear of not having enough, fear of what others think. You sound like someone who understands that money is just a tool." Klaus is right. Money is a tool, and like any tool, it's only as good as the person using it. Victoria tried to use money as a weapon against me. James tried to use his access to financial information as leverage for personal gain. I use money as protection, as freedom, and as a means to help others achieve their financial goals. The Sterling Holdings client base has grown to over 50 families, managing more than $200 million in offshore investments. Every client is someone who values discretion, competence, and results over flashy marketing and empty promises. Word-of-mouth referrals from satisfied clients have made advertising unnecessary. The best marketing is consistent performance and absolute reliability. But the most satisfying aspect of my new life is the knowledge that I built it through my own skills, my own knowledge and my own work. Victoria thought she could take my money and leave me with nothing. Instead, she forced me to discover that my real wealth was never the money itself. It was the knowledge, experience, and relationships that created the money in the first place. When Victoria said I was nothing without my money, she revealed that she fundamentally misunderstood what made me successful. My worth was never the balance in my bank accounts. My worth was the expertise that filled those accounts, the relationships that trusted me with their wealth, and the character that earned their confidence. Take away my money, and I can rebuild it because I still have the knowledge and skills that created it originally. Take away Victoria's access to unearned wealth, and she had nothing left because she'd never developed the ability to create wealth independently. The difference between us wasn't intelligence or education. Victoria had an MBA from Yale and was clearly smart enough to orchestrate a complex conspiracy. The difference was that I spent 25 years learning how to create value for others, while Victoria spent 18 years learning how to extract value from me. I received a letter from Victoria last Christmas, forwarded through David Wilson's office. She'd written to apologize again and to let me know she was doing well in Ohio, building a real estate career and learning to live within her means. The tone was genuinely remorseful, and I actually felt happy that she was finding her way to a more authentic life. But what struck me most about the letter was that Victoria still didn't understand what she'd lost. She wrote about missing the penthouse, the lifestyle, the financial security. She didn't mention missing our conversations, our partnership, or the relationship we'd built together. Even in apologizing, Victoria focused on the money rather than the marriage. I never wrote back, not out of cruelty, but because there was nothing left to say. Victoria and I had lived in the same penthouse for 18 years, but we'd been living in completely different worlds. She'd been living in a world where money was the point of everything. I'd been living in a world where money was supposed to support everything else that mattered. The lesson I've learned is that money reveals character rather than creating it. Wealth amplifies who you really are. If you're generous, you become more generous. If you're selfish, you become more selfish. If you're grateful, you become more grateful. If you're entitled, you become more entitled. Victoria's access to wealth revealed that she was fundamentally entitled and manipulative. My loss of domestic wealth revealed that I was fundamentally resourceful and resilient. James's temptation by wealth revealed that he was fundamentally disloyal and corrupt. The money didn't change us. It just showed us who we really were under the surface. 3 weeks ago, I received an unexpected email from Tom Wilson, my old client at Aerospace Corporation. He was visiting the Cayman Islands on vacation and wondered if I'd like to have dinner. We spent an evening at my favorite restaurant overlooking 7 Mile Beach, catching up on business and life. "Robert," Tom said over coffee and cigars, "I have to ask, do you ever regret how everything played out? Do you miss your old life in Manhattan?" I looked out at the moonlight reflecting off the Caribbean, thinking about his question. Did I miss the stress of Wall Street? Did I miss managing other people's egos and office politics? Did I miss being married to someone who saw me as a bank account rather than a human being? Tom, I've learned that the best revenge against people who try to destroy you is building a life so good that their destruction becomes irrelevant. Victoria thought she was taking everything that mattered to me. What she actually did was force me to discover that everything that really mattered was portable. And what really mattered? My knowledge, my experience, my relationships with people who value competence and integrity, and my ability to create value for others. Victoria could never take those things because she never understood that those things were the real source of my wealth. Tom raised his glass. To second acts and better choices. To learning that the best protection against betrayal is building a life that doesn't depend on other people's loyalty. We toasted the Caribbean sunset, and I felt more grateful than I ever had during my years of supposed happiness in Manhattan. This morning, as I finish writing this story from my office overlooking the sea, I'm preparing for another day of managing investments and helping clients achieve their financial goals. My calendar includes video calls with families in 3 time zones, all of whom trust me to protect and grow their wealth through the same offshore strategies that protected mine. But more importantly, tonight I'm having dinner with Sarah Linden, who's just returned from a 2-week research expedition studying coral bleaching patterns. She'll tell me about her work with the same passion I feel when discussing investment strategies, and we'll plan our weekend diving trip to explore reefs where she's conducting her research. Sarah doesn't care that I used to live in an $8 million penthouse or that I once managed portfolios for Goldman Sachs. She cares that I listen when she talks about her work, that I share her concern about environmental protection, and that I make her laugh during long walks on the beach. The difference between Victoria and Sarah is the difference between someone who sees you as a resource to be exploited and someone who sees you as a person to be valued. That difference is worth more than all the money Victoria tried to steal. What's the most satisfying moment of justice you've witnessed? Share your story in the comments. And if this inspired you, smash that subscribe button for incredible tales of justice served. Sometimes, the best thing that can happen to you is having someone try to destroy you and failing completely. Because when you survive that kind of betrayal, with your integrity intact, when you build something better from the foundation they tried to demolish, when you prove that competence and character matter more than manipulation and conspiracy, that's when you realize you were never actually dependent on them in the first place. You just needed them to betray you to discover how strong you really were. Victoria thought money was power. James thought inside information was leverage. They both learned that knowledge, integrity, and international financial expertise are more powerful than domestic legal manipulation and adultery. But the most important lesson I learned is this: the people who truly love you want you to succeed and be happy, even if your success doesn't directly benefit them. The people who see you as a resource to be managed or exploited will always reveal their true nature when they think they can get away with betraying you. Victoria revealed her true nature when she thought I was helpless to defend myself. James revealed his true nature when he thought he could profit from betraying a friendship. I revealed my true nature when I had to choose between becoming a victim and becoming a strategist. The choice was easy. Victims let other people control their destiny. Strategists take control of their own. Today I control my own destiny from a place where the water is clear, the taxes are reasonable, and the banking privacy laws are strong enough to protect against any future conspiracies. Victoria is in Ohio, learning for the first time in her adult life what it means to work for money instead of manipulating others to provide it. James is in New Jersey, learning what it means to build a career from scratch after destroying your reputation through betrayal, and I'm in the Cayman Islands learning what it means to be truly free. The money Victoria tried to steal was never really the point. The point was learning that when someone shows you who they really are, you should believe them and respond accordingly. Sometimes the best defense is a Swiss bank account, but the best defense is being so competent, so prepared, and so financially sophisticated that people who underestimate you get exactly what they deserve: nothing. Ever wonder how some men turn betrayal into empire? The Wolf's Justice eBook reveals the blueprint: real psychology, proven tactics, zero fluff. Name your investment, $0 to $25. Link is in the video description, or scan the QR code on the screen to download now. Thank you for listening to my story. If it reminded you that knowledge and preparation can defeat conspiracy and betrayal, if it showed you that integrity ultimately wins over manipulation, then please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't yet, consider subscribing to our channel for more interesting revenge stories uploaded weekly. And remember, when someone tells you they think you're nothing without your money, they're telling you exactly how much they think you're worth as a person. Believe them, plan accordingly, and show them that they were wrong about everything that matters. Because in the end, people who try to steal your life usually end up destroying their own. And that's the most satisfying justice of all.